Thank
All
you,
right.
Mr. Caius.
Okay, I hate to interrupt, Ms. Allen, but time being 10:10, and we said we'd try and get right on there. I'm going to call, my name is Chris Caius. I'm chairman of the Administration Committee for Kane County. We're calling the administration meeting for Wednesday, September 15th, 2021 to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Martin,
Present.
Berman,
Herman here.
Javist,
Javist here.
Ford.
Here.
Gums. Purog. Shepro,
Shepro present.
Caius.
And Caius present.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. Can I have a motion and a second for approving the minutes from the the August 11th, 2021 meeting?
Raz moves.
Braz moves.
Second.
Berman seconds. Is there any changes or discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Yes.
Davist,
Javist, yes.
Ford, Braz,
Yes.
Gums.
Gums is here and yes.
Thank you. Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Financial report. Is there anyone, no one here? The reports are attached then. We'll move on to public comment. Any public comment today? Anybody online? And have anybody listed? All right, facilities management. This is going to be the Chris Allen show today, I think. Our Executive Director of Facilities Management, Chris Allen.
Well, thank you, sir. So for item B, as far as updates, and I have it lower in the agenda, the Sheriff's Jail East Road resurfacing project has started and finished. I do have pictures available if anybody wants to see a during and or after shot of pavement being done. Pending that, we'll move on.
Sounds exciting. Do we do get pictures? Are they going to be quick?
Yeah,
it
pictures are
depends.
always
Ross
good.
has to leave.
Depends on how quick Drew, or not Drew, but Blair can get them up. Yep, email yesterday, sir.
We'll give them a chance to look at that. We may bring it up a little later, then we'll move on.
Okay, sir.
Is there anything else that under capital? That's the main thing, was the sheriff's.
Yeah, that's the
repayment.
main thing going on right now.
Item B is authorizing capital projects adjustments in the capital projects fund for fiscal year 2, FY2,
Yeah, typo, sorry.
2022, 20.
Go back in time, I guess.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, sir. This is a housekeeping to move unused budgeted project funds in 2021 to 2021 contingency if needed.
Okay. Can I have a motion and a second?
Raz moves.
Roz,
Herman second.
Berman? Any discussion? This is just bookkeeping, so,
Housekeeping, yeah.
or housekeeping, yes. Okay. No discussion, then roll call. please.
Berman,
Herman, yes.
Davist,
Javist, yes.
Ford. Braz,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Passed.
Ford did say he'd be back. Okay, item 5C, authorizing contract for Kane County Real Estate Brokerage Services. Again, Mr. Allen?
Yes, this is to get a brokerage service on board if needed and identifies two executives who are on the master plan team who can represent the county if needed.
Very concise. I have a motion and a second.
Raz moves. Herman second.
Javist, second.
Froz and Davis. There's somebody else in the meeting. Okay, brokerage service. So this is for the brokerage, authorizing contract for Kane County Real Estate Brokerage Services.
Correct, sir.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Froz?
So Chris, this is just, for example, if a piece of surplus property becomes available, we would have somebody already lined up to handle it, or
Yes, sir.
That.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That way we don't have to go searching, slowing the process down.
We'll have them ready on call.
I believe we do this at, Frost speaking, I believe we do this at Forest Preserve already with a similar type of situation, but it's more of a residential broker.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Bras,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Yes. Motion passes. I don't think we have anything. I see Charles Lasky here. Nothing from IT this morning.
No, nothing from IT.
I know you're busy just because you're not have any items here. I know it's always moving over there. Okay, thank you. Item 7, Mill Creek SSA. Mr. Allen, you have comments about?
Yeah, in reference the Mill Creek FY 2022 budget slides that were briefed at the committee of a whole on the budget, the SSA simply just cannot continue to draw down on the reserves to balance the budget and provide increased services. And it's kind of an unhealthy practice. I will propose a potential levy increase or reduction of services at the next advisory committee meeting on the 20th, then make adjustments that's necessary to the budget. Just keeping the admin committee informed that we're constantly trying to figure out ways to get better services as well as remain within the budget.
Mr. Frost, any comments about that?
Yeah, we've been talking about it and staff's been on top of this for the last several months. So we're talking internally, but we'd like to run it by all the board members of the advisory board and get their response. But yeah, we just can't continue to pull, 40,000 out of the reserves every year when we've only got 300,000. And the fear is if something major happens, like a tornado or flood where we have to hire some subs real quick and spend 50,000, we won't have it. So we're trying to come up with a long-term solution. So the next step will be run it by the SSA advisory board and then come back to this committee.
And that's the typical procedures. The advisory board lets us know what their wishes are, and then we enact it.
Yeah, the advisory board's made up of residents of Mill Creek who are also taxpayers into the SSA fund. And they advise us, but they're strictly an advisory role, kind of like the ZBA zoning board.
Okay, Mr. Martin?
To the last sentence that Drew offered, I assume, I'm totally supportive of keeping the reserves and in fact rebuilding them to whatever they realistically should be if they're short. But I don't want us to be on the hook down the road. So we in fact can if the advisory board said, no, we want to continue the present, we have the authority to dictate, in fact, how that levy is established and what's in it. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the staff researched the process. It's actually fairly simple, but we'd of course like to do it with their.
Well, no, I'm not
blessing. Yeah.
suggesting we ought to declare war. I'm just
Yeah,
saying that
it's up
if
to
it- if
us.
it's-
We can,
okay,
yeah,
all
we
right.
can do it, but they're in our their advisory capacity to us.
Okay, thank you.
That's the good news and the bad news. Madam Chair?
Yes, I just have a question. How much further are they behind in their reserves? Should it be 500,000, 750,000? I mean, what is the goal to be comfortable with those reserves?
I believe the comfort level is 300,000. And what are we at now, right now, Chris?
I'd have to go back and look, but I think we're around 189.
So just every year it comes down by a big chunk. So we're trying to head it off before it gets down to, 80 or something.
For clarification, then you are asking them to increase their levy into the special service fund?
Yes.
And what is their current levy? I know it's based on house value.
Yeah, I've seen so many different percentages trying to research this, ma'am. I'd have to get back to you on that, but it's essentially somewhere around half of what it could be, if I recall.
I think the key point though is that it hasn't ever changed since the subdivision was founded in the early 90s.
Yeah, yes, it's remained flat for 27 years.
Oh.
All right, so they're going to have to do some catching up, which is going to be painful. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then item B, or any other discussion on that? Item B, authorizing contract extension for Mill Creek SSA snow plowing services. Mr. Allen?
Yes, this is a simple housekeeping extension to get the snow plowing services for the Mill Creek SSA ready to go for the winter.
Praz moves.
Praz moves,
Berman second.
Berman second. Any discussion?
It's a local for us speaking, it's a local company that we've had under contract for many different types of services for many years, and I believe staff's happy with them. So,
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
great. Other comments? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Bras,
yes,
Gums,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Yes, yes. Okay, I don't believe we have any other item, with nothing under vehicles. Now maybe under item 9, we could show the Sheriff's East Extension.
Yes, if Blair had him up
I
a little
think I saw him
earlier.
flash by there.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
There we go.
if I may, I'd like to just talk a little bit about vehicles. As we are.
Okay, Madam Chairman?
Thank you. As we are moving forward, looking at being conservative.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing you with that microphone, either closer or maybe grab
Is that
another one.
better?
Yes, that's
Oh,
better.
great, wonderful. I'd like to just open up a discussion. We don't have to go into it in depth because this is just questions. How are we moving forward with electric vehicles as we start transitioning our vehicles that are getting aging in place? Do we have a opportunity to really be thoughtful with this and how we actually transition into either natural gas vehicles or for our trucks? Or are we going to really take a look at how we're going to move over to electric vehicles? And if so, should we start thinking about doing some long-term planning on having the charge stations available as well, which is going to be our own infrastructure? And I'm not saying doing it overnight, but within the next 5 years to really have a plan on how we're going to transition our gas cars to electric.
Would that be under the master plan?
It definitely could be. I can speak for building management that we approached purchasing just the other day to start pulling research on what vehicle options are for the building management needs. And then, of course, look at pricing and see how we can come in with an A&O plan in reference to electric vehicles.
I think it's excellent and timely, I think.
Yeah, and A&O stands for age
working-
and obsolescence. If people are listening, don't understand my jargon.
And I just found out yesterday that with this new energy bill that was passed through and will be signed today by the governor, that there's going to be a $4,000 rebate if you buy an electric vehicle. So we should do a little research on that and what that entails.
If it's available for us. If it's a
Correct.
tax credit, that would be a different
Absolutely.
thing, but
If it's a tax credit or if it's actual rebate
Which
for
is definite.
encouragement.
just a cash rebate, yeah, important. And I would suggest working with Madam Bates in Energy and Environment on that. We could maybe, as our committee, work together with them and.
Sounds like a fun
Thank you, Mr.
project.
Chairman. Bates here.
Yes. Madam Bates.
I think Ms. Klee, Ms. Ivy, to our sustainability plan, and maybe that would be a good place to include that.
I'm sorry, it glitched out on me a little bit. What would you say?
Okay, let me switch over to my computer. I'm on the phone.
Miss Ivy Clee, I'm gonna, okay, switch it. Miss Ivy Clee is going to be working on the operational sustainability plan for the county and updating that. And I believe that that would be a good place to start with some of this planning.
Okay. Well, we can work together with our master plan then.
Right.
That sounds like a good conjunction.
Could we put
Chairman.
a proposal deadline on when we can at least get a preliminary report on this, perhaps early next year?
Sure. That sounds like a good idea.
maybe January.
I think so.
Okay,
By the end
excellent.
of the year. Here comes Jody. She might have a, were you listening in?
I was.
Would
If
you give a
you want me
That's, here we go.
Here comes
yeah.
Jody to set me straight.
That's fantastic. I probably missed part of your comments, Madam Bates, running up from the downstairs, but E&E and the Energy and Environment Committee, as well as our group, has available resources for charging stations. One of the challenges we have on county property is the newer charging stations that charge in a very short period of time. A lot of times our electric service isn't great enough to achieve that. So we'll be looking at different resources for the charging stations to make sure that they're compatible with the sites that we have. We have run into additional maintenance issues with the charging stations that we do have. Last year, our budget went entirely to maintenance on the stations that are run by Kane County. And the other challenge is that many of the vehicles that the county uses aren't available in electric models currently. So that's something we can work on in Energy and Environment Committee to move that task forward.
Okay.
Thank you. We can put that on our agenda for our next meeting. Thanks, Ms. Wolnick.
And Jody, thank you for running up.
Yeah. Breathe, breathe.
And that would be something, if it's the electrical circuits that are not working properly with enough power, I'm sure to be working with Chris then on developing on how that can be, your two departments will be working together on that.
Yes, and it becomes a lot more costly when we're looking at charging stations that charge in a very short period of time. For example, the 3rd Street Courthouse is not compatible with those charging stations. And so a new electric service would need to be run to the building and the panel upgraded. So you get into a very costly venture when it gets to that point. But we do have opportunities at some of our other campuses that we have the greater serviceability, especially this campus here, that we could do those more efficient charging stations.
Okay, good, good.
And conveniently, 3rd Street is one of the projects listed that I've mentioned before as an ongoing project for an electrical upgrade. So we'll be able to mesh those together eventually in the future.
Excellent. Mr. Frost?
Final thought, if we build a new government campus, it would have all the latest technology and electrical systems to plug cars into.
There you go. Show me the money.
We could have a toll booth on the new government center.
It would actually make our cars solar, I think, wouldn't it? If we're drawing solar power in out there and putting it right into the cars.
Mine is.
Nobody likes my idea of a toll booth on the new government center.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry. Would
We'll
somebody say
charge
toll-
for parking in our new parking facility.
Okay. Well.
It has to be
moving ahead,
sunsetted though.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gomes, did you have something?
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew it had to be sunsetted.
Oh,
Yes.
We're
Sunset
poking
the
you,
toll
Chris.
booth.
We're poking you.
no tolling. Oh, that's
Sunset
an
the toll
idea.
booth.
So, but just going back to all seriousness, I think it is a possibility that we can start looking at the transition, whether or not it's our deputies' vehicles, maintenance vehicles, and transportation vehicles, and certainly, Jody, your vehicles as well, to start really targeting and see how we're going to be doing this transition and what it's going to take and financially how we can support it. If all goes well and the federal dollars are available for that, we perhaps with a plan, we can start looking at some grants that'll enable us at least to do some pilot programs. But we have to have our ducks in a row, obviously, with a thoughtful plan to be able to appropriate and ask for those resources. And if now that we do have solar, that'll be eventually at the Judicial Center, you're absolutely correct. Perhaps we can talk about that. If that is an opportunity for us, I don't know. And if we could do it here as well, if we don't build a new campus or the campus is going to be in the future, could those be powered by solar cells? It's just, the research is required.
The current charging station out at the judicial center for the 4 sheriff's vehicles it comes through that same meter that's going to be utilized for the solar. So
Excellent.
we will be using solar for recharging those four vehicles.
Good. Very
Driving
good.
on sunshine.
Wow,
Yeah, it's good.
good news. Yeah. I was just up at up at Madison over the Labor Day, and the the new Google building has a whole parking lot of Tesla chargers going in. I think they were brand new, but I saw at least 9 charging stations for their parking lot there on the north side of Madison. So things are happening.
And before, because I made 2 suggestions, what about natural gas? Is that something that we can amend to our current vehicles for our transportation vehicles?
Mr. Franz's contribution?
We talked about that back when I was on, I guess at admin, when I was chairing admin. But there is a company, local company, I think, that does that, but it's very expensive to retrofit. Big trucks, I know there's one of the largest cement mixer companies, fleets in Chicago, is using natural gas, but there are some challenges for our snow plows because the tank has to be so big. Space on those trucks is already at a premium for all the equipment they have. So right now it's not real viable.
For larger,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, Ms.
Bates,
Bates.
please. I would much rather see us move forward with electric. The natural gas is still a fossil fuel and maybe not where we want to go.
Comment accepted.
Yeah,
Madam Chair, another comment?
absolutely. But if we can look at our snow plows and see if there's for the future, to see what's going to be available. So once again, as they're transitioning, if we can remove away from gasoline to, I have no idea what, that can possibly move those vehicles appropriately. That may be something that we can start considering
Talk to KDOT.
and
Yeah,
look at long-term plans for that.
We are using biodiesel in the trucks, and the percentage of that comes, I believe, from soybeans. But at KDOT, the quickest way to transcend would be to start at the other end of the fleet, not at the larger end. Start at the smaller end with all the foreman's vehicles and the staff vehicles, and we could certainly go to electric on the sedans, which we already have down to a very compact gasoline model. So it'd be real easy to transition to electric on the cars and the pickups and so forth. The big trucks would be a challenge because when they go out for 24 hours. And we certainly don't want, and there is no viable electric big truck right now, but there probably will be in the future.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Interesting discussion. Excuse me, interesting discussion. Exciting, very exciting.
Thank you for bringing that up, Madam Chair.
Okay, I lost track of where I was here. I got so excited.
Construction.
Did we see we saw
Paving picture.
the pictures?
Claire, can you bring up the roads, please? So this is a picture of the East Jail Road while it's being grinded down. The grindings were repurposed and reused on the service road behind the salt dome. So we didn't pay for removal of that material. Next picture, please. And that is the completed similar view, just without the striping.
This is looking north.
Yeah. Looking up the hill, yeah.
Blair's not sharing with us online.
Oh,
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing a nice road.
I have it too.
okay. I think it's user error then, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I have a picture in my mind. That'll work for now.
Okay. It is pretty close. Maybe you can visit. Almost in your district.
Blacktop.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll go look at my driveway.
Okay. New. We'll finish with that one then. Item 10, any new business?
No new business.
And for old business?
Yes, if I may take the microphone again, under old business, and I've mentioned it before, I had commissioned a staffing assessment, cost benefit analysis on the building management department. Mr. Bradley Townsend is here today. He's who I commissioned to do the assessment. And if pleases the chairman, I'll bring him up, introduce him, and
Why don't we do that? now?
okay, Mr. Townsend, can you take the microphone there? So Brad, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your qualifications for this project, as well as give us an overview of your findings.
Be happy to do that, Chris. I'm happy to be back here at Kane County again. Most of you probably don't know me. A few of you in the room do. I worked on a couple other assessment or studies for the Kane County regarding rates related to your Information Technologies Department and Geographic Information Systems Department in the past, and always found it to be a very fulfilling and interesting and challenging to work with Kane County, and happy to be here again. So this particular project was brought to my attention, and I started talking to Chris about it, and also with Rick. And I found myself interested in it because, really because of my background. So I'll go back to what Chris was asking me to do. I am a former city manager, village manager, county administrator. I've been a controller. I've been a financial consultant. All those were at different times and sometimes simultaneous over a period of 40 years. Right now, I'm mostly retired, but I do take on special projects. And this particular one, I have turned down some because my wife says I should, and plus it just makes sense. But this one I found to be of a particular interest to me because of what I said before about Kane, and also just the substance of it. And Chris mentioned that, you know, we first looked at this as maybe looking at staff and maybe some of the operations, but as I got into it, it went beyond that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But part of my background also is in public works, in building maintenance. That goes back to my experience in Springfield, and I was public works director there. And I was also the director of construction and operations for the Schaumburg Hotel and Convention Center project, and had the chance to work on some other projects over the years. So that project background, along with my operational and financial background, really, I think made me well suited for this particular project. And so hopefully what I say today, if it does raise some questions, I'll be able to answer your questions. And hopefully it will also be something that could be the beginning of you hopefully using this information for action to be taken, because that's something I mentioned a number of times in the report. Is it's one thing to look at something, discover the problems, look at possible ways to fix it, and then recommend what can be done. But then all that doesn't mean anything unless there's a way to actually make it happen. Just like your discussion a few minutes ago about the vehicles. We do talk about the vehicles a little bit in here, but we didn't, for the purpose of this report, go further into fleet replacement, but that should be part of this. So that's basically my background, and I hope that what I brought to this report and any further discussions we have down the road will be helpful for the executive director, the other director, and the members of this committee, and perhaps others on the county board, because some of this will definitely require deliberation and oversight and elected official action. It's not something that the department directors or management in that department are going to have the ability to do all by themselves. In fact, that's one of the reasons why this study was done, because there are problems. So, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions about my background, but that's basically it. If you want to
proceed.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, if anybody has any further questions about that, I did give Chris a brief bio. It's not my resume, but it's a brief bio that covers all that I just mentioned, plus more concerning my professional affiliations. Okay, so the way this was approached was to a deep dive into, just what's going on to the best that we can possibly find out. And that meant fact finding on a number of levels. And this included looking at documents. And thankfully, again, it goes back to my comment about King County. You have a lot of transparency with your documentation, actions that are taken by your elected officials. It's all great stuff, I can tell you that. I wish that we'd had that, years ago with some of the things that we had to deal with in the public sector. But that allowed me to be able to access documents, not only from King County, but from other counties and other sources out there. Because I started out by looking internally at what was going on to the best of my ability with King County, with the building management department in particular, and the departments that department serves. I mean, it's basically an internal service department that yes, it's providing a service for the general public and the overall county board, but it's actually on a day-to-day basis, maybe more frequently, supporting the other line departments that are providing direct service to the citizens of this county. And that's critical. And it's, to me, it's like it's the backbone in many ways to everything else that you do here. I felt the same way about the information technologies department when I was working there. Again, support to other departments. There's things they do themselves, but there's also that backbone approach. So this, again, I viewed as a critical department, and that's what attracted me to working on this, and also seeking out, what was going on. So it went beyond looking at personnel, by the way. That may have been our first original discussion. We got into more areas of what's going on. And I'm talking about not only what's going on with the personnel, but also with the equipment, with the facilities, with the financing that's provided, the related activities of not only the buildings, but external maintenance that goes on. And just how is it that the building management department, who does, as far as I can tell, an excellent job, how are they able to get that done, even though they're challenged every day with just getting the work done? As I also found out, demand for work, demand for service has been increasing over time. And I don't see any reason why it will not, that trend will not continue. I see it continuing. And this is because you have, yes, new buildings that you've authorized to the county board, but that also requires kind of a shakeout of those buildings. But you've got a lot of older buildings with equipment within it that is itself aging, and in itself needs to be either replaced or a different system put in into situation. So these were all things that I found overall. So looking at the compensation, let's if I can go back to that for just a moment in the personnel. I think the biggest, I'm going to use the word crisis. Maybe that's overused in this day and age with the pandemic and other things going on, but I think the biggest crisis that and challenge, if you want to use a more positive word, that the department is facing is the personnel, especially the workers that are in the field, because there's just been a chronic turnover of staff. And I could not find that it has anything to do with how people are treated or the workplace itself. What it's about is what they're being paid. And I know that can be a delicate and tough thing to bring up to you, because when you talk about that and you say, well, if they're not getting paid enough, what are you trying to say? Well, I looked at internally what they're getting paid. I looked and compared that with other counties. Clearly, Kane County, even with the comparable surrounding counties that I surveyed, falls way short of the basic pay and other benefits compared to the others. And What has been one of the results of that? Turnover, not just this year, but going back multiple years. Right now, half of the maintenance worker positions are vacant. So 50% is vacant, yet work still has to be done. I also looked at other positions in the custodian, administrative staff, and also at the management level. And I found that particularly in those other positions, there's also an underpayment compared to the other counties. One other thing I looked at was, well, what about the private sector? Because I tried to convey a little bit from my background. Yes, I've worked as a public servant, but I've also been in a business consultant. And so I felt like, let's take a look at what the trades are getting paid out there, because there are businesses out there that maybe, all desperate to hire, or they may be having turnover. So they reach out. And in this case, I found that when you look at the prevailing wage rate of the Illinois Department of Labor, even as I did by removing reference to any overhead costs or any benefit costs, just the straight payment, that the Kane County field workers fall short of what those people are getting paid generally for prevailing wage rate. So that sets up in the area of personnel and compensation, competition that is very, puts the Human Resources Department and the Building Management Department in a tough and sometimes impossible position to be able to hire and then hold on to. It isn't just hiring, it's actually retaining the employees. So they end up losing people after maybe a year or so of training. So Kane County becomes a training ground, and then somebody else benefits from it. That is a loss of your investment dollars from the taxpayers. That is a serious matter that really shouldn't be happening. Not intended, of course, by anybody in this room or elsewhere, but I'm just pointing out what I have seen, what exists. And I told Chris from the beginning I was going to be straightforward in what I saw, not critical, just laying out the facts. Okay. So that's pretty much takes care of that. But except for one last one, I wanted to mention, I did take a quick look at also what current job openings at these other counties, and all of them had, and actually Kane had the openings posted as well. Again, the range for Kane less than all those others. So anybody just taking a quick look at the job announcements would see right there that, so you may be, the reason I'm bringing that one up is because you may actually be missing out on some people that don't even apply to Kane because they see that the range is less, and they'll just channel to the others. Again, unfortunate, not intended, but it's the way it is. So I have, that took some analysis, so I have analytical conclusions regarding that, and that's all laid out in the report. Another thing I brought up was, well, looking forward, what should be done here? But before I do that, Mr. Chairman, should I stop in case there's any questions about the fact finding on that, or should I continue? I don't want to be preaching here. I just want to.
And you have the charts for those comparisons of wages on 14.
Yes.
Pages
Yes.
4. I'm just going to refer to that.
Those are all in there in the body of it, and then I go into even more detail. By the way, I should mention at the beginning, I boiled all this down to one-page memo at the beginning of the report. And I learned that a long time ago from my professor, mentor, Jim Banovitz, and others. Hey, boil stuff down if you can. But I also have all the details, Mr. Chairman, in the report, and even more detail with citations and sources that back up what I'm saying to you in the worksheets that are toward the end of the report. So that way, depending on what time you have or what your responsibilities are with the county board, you can look at this as oversight as much as you want or further into the details.
Certainly much material here to digest. And I apologize, I don't think that anyone online has these, do they? No, so I apologize. We just got these, so
Right.
nobody's fault. It's just a matter of timing. Maybe we make sure that certainly at least the committee members receive a copy of the materials.
Yeah, I can get these, a digital version PDFs to Karen today for distribution.
Okay, or
Right.
Would you
anybody else.
send that out to everybody, please?
I think everybody, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have just limited to that. We should have this go to everyone because the charts are
Okay.
quick and enlightening. You can give Mr.
Well, would that then need to go to Jane?
Yeah, send it to Jane, have her distribute, yeah.
I will consider it done, ma'am.
And then you can give Mr. Allen some instructions on executive summaries. That's an inside joke. Short inside.
Yeah.
Executive summary.
Point taken, sir.
Not gonna let it go, am I?
Yeah, I should mention also, there was a mayor I used to work for too that said to me, Brad, this is too long. So I learned that about 30 plus years ago.
Yeah, okay. And I see your introduction on page, is that what you're referring to as your short memo on page 1?
Yes, yes. The one that's memorandum addressed to Chris and Rick, the department. That's
okay.
that's really what I would call I mean, it doesn't say that, but that's what I would call the executive summary.
Okay.
And then following that is the table of contents, which I hope would help people to maybe go to something that they're interested in. And then following that is like an annotated summary of the findings, conclusions, and recommendations. And then it's the report. So it's kind of like a pyramid. It starts with, the smallest and most oversight, and then it grows out from there in terms of its density and detail.
Okay, well, everybody will be receiving this then, and that'll give us something to digest. You want to quickly move on to?
Yes,
whatever
I can
you've
go
got
down
there?
quickly to the recommendations, and this is also in that summary page, but it's also on page 32.
And we can bring this up at another meeting too, if there's.
And if
further
Mr.
discussion.
Townsend, would you be willing to come back at a later time for more questions after they've had time to
I'm willing
digest the
to,
report?
if they don't fall asleep or keel over from reading this thing.
We don't make guarantees on that.
I can't guarantee anything, right?
Yeah,
But yes, Chris, I'd be willing to do that. Sure.
Thank you, sir.
so if you want to just quickly do the summary on the.
Yes, I can now. So let's go to I'm going to go to what I call the conclusion and plan of action. And basically what I came up with was 13 things. And these are tough ones, some of them. They're not something that can be, answered in one meeting, and it's probably going to take some deliberation. Some of it will take some time, probably through your capital improvements and budget process. But my read of discussions with Chris and Rick are they're willing to do that because they really want this situation to be brought to the forth, and they want to see something done, and they're willing to help out to do whatever they can with you. And so if I can, be the one that kind of provides a little guidance independently, that's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm trying to do.
And
So
that's on page 32 you're talking.
yeah,
about?
page 32, and I can just go through these quickly, but if there's any questions, we can certainly go over that. So as I said, we spent a little time here talking about the personnel, but there's other things. There's capital deferral. I looked at your capital improvement plan, for example, and that's the one that's number 11 down there, and number 12 refers to those, and probably 13. So I'm starting with the bottom of that list. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because there may be someone who would disagree with me on this within King County, but I would say that my read of it is that you have real good best practices, I think, for your capital improvements planning process. I mean, I've had a chance to look at your current one. I've looked at some of your past ones. It fits what my understanding is of it and what my actual experience has been with it. However, it appears to me that a problem that I discovered by going through this, which was deferral of a lot of improvements that need to be made. You talked about the new building, or what somebody did earlier in this meeting, and I'm quite familiar with your multi-purpose building and some of the others that are newer, but you have mostly older buildings, and just like almost everybody does. And the bottom line is that there's been a requirement on the part of the building maintenance department to send people in and fix things that just as a Band-Aid approach kind of to get it done. And they've done a good job of doing that, but then that requires return visits, that requires extra effort. It pulls the field workers or the contractors that the department hires off of other things that need to be done because you're going back and doing repeated work on the same stuff. What are these? These can be HVAC equipment, some electrical, plumbing, whatever. So what I'm saying in here is that there needs to be a closer look at what those items are. And you could incorporate it into your master planning, like you mentioned before, or your capital improvement planning process. Because right now you're very heavy toward big project items and some other things related to that. But I think I even found that out of your, I just looked at the current time, out of the 63 million or so that was part of your capital project improvements for facilities and everything, only about 1 million of that had to do with things to keep the older buildings going, to replace, either replace or just operate the other buildings. And these other departments are relying on building maintenance to keep their offices open or their facilities open. And if they can't do that, or if they have to be repeatedly going in and fixing something that breaks down, that's going to be business disruption for them, for their clients, for the citizens that come in. And that has happened. And a related matter to that, if I can go up to, let's see, which one is it here? It probably has to do with 3 and 4 maybe on that list, which is that, yes, they're doing everything they can to track services, but they do need some additional help to do that because everybody else is so busy they can't even keep track of everything, all the service requests. They have some that come in through the program that they have, the IT program. There's others that come in verbally. Some of them come in by emails, whatever. They need somebody to help track that better. So that's an efficiency matter. And an internal person, additional, would be a big help, along with maybe some other administrative support in the management office. So getting on to what do they do with that? Well, they're trying to assign these workers. I already told you about the vacancy problem and the turnover. Well, the other one is how can employees, even if they were fully staffed, how can they be deployed? Well, right now there's only one shift. That is during the work week. And remember, this is a department that's providing internal service support for the other departments. And when they do that, just the very nature of it is a crew comes in or a person comes in from a crew and they're trying to work on something while the other department staff are doing their work either at their desk or with their clients that are coming to the counter or in a meeting room or whatever. And that is something that is inefficient. So when you look at efficiencies, more tracking effort, see if you can find a way to add personnel, workforce, that's the other thing, with an extra shift. I think that would be a big plus for this department to be able to get something done. Because when either Rick or Chris are looking at their list of things that have to be done that day, who are they going to send? They need those positions filled, and then they need to be able to have the flexibility of being able to do it, perhaps send it in the evening to avoid that office tension or conflict that sometimes happens when they show up, even though they try to be as quiet as they can. And perhaps weekend too would be, give them that flexibility, but that's going to be the workforce. So that kind of leads into my workforce comment that I'll try to, I know I'm laying out a lot of stuff here because there are a lot of issues. The workforce, when I compared it to the other counties, even if it was fully staffed, the workforce, which they're not, the workforce of building management is still less compared to the other counties surrounding. These are larger counties, smaller counties, some that are about the same size, less. And what did I do? I went ahead and took the approach, and there's a lot of ways you can look at this. I took the approach of how many citizens are there or population of this county, that county, and the other, and simply did a per capita mathematical calculation. And that's where I found out that, and again, this is just one way to look at it. There's like over 40,000 population per each worker, assuming there's a full staffing in Kane County. All the others are less than half that in terms of the number of people they serve per person. So, you know, even just looking at it from that kind of maybe 30,000 foot level, they have a big challenge. And I think it's amazing that they get done what they do get done. But that's not a sustainable thing. I got feedback from the department. There is potential for burnout. There's potential for losing people just from the workload itself. I wasn't able to determine that that's why maintenance workers are leaving. I think it's more about the compensation, but there could be that could be part of it. Not able to get my finger on that though. So I didn't write anything about that. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility to consider. The other ones have to do with what I thought was, after looking at it and studying it and checking on it, it seemed a little odd to me that from my background in management and administration, that the building management department was the coordinator or administrator of a special service area. In my experience, and I didn't do a survey, but just in my experience, I've never seen anything like that. The other thing was let's see here. Oh, the other one had to do with the vehicle fleet. The vehicle fleet master list. That one is probably not as unusual for me to see with a building, maybe with a building management department, but still, in both those cases, I think there should be serious consideration to reassigning those responsibilities to departments that might be more suitable. And in the case of the SSA, I think looking at part of my planning background and development background that I have, it just looks to me like one of your development type departments would be better suited to managing that. Now, at the same time I say that, both the building management department and the King County Department of Transportation certainly may still have a viable role in helping keep things going in that special service area. But for BMD to be managing that or coordinating that, I think is diverting their attention away from the basic work that they need to do that we've already talked about a little bit here today. People in those other departments, I think, are more professionally and by experience suited to deal with, you know, public information issues that relate to that, planning issues, promotional issues, development issues. That is not really in the wheelhouse of a public works / building maintenance kind of department. So I think that's a little misplaced. I don't know how it got there, but I think you ought to consider moving that out of there. And that might mean sitting down, you know, maybe a small group sitting down and working out a transition there. And that list, that was another thing that is not as big of a deal as the SSA, but it was something that I found what came from a declaration of the county auditor. And I'm sure the auditor had good reasons for that. Some of that might have been to keep it independent, maybe from other departments that are larger. But I think just from my management standpoint, I'm not questioning what the auditor's declaration was, but I think from my standpoint, that list, because it has to do with vehicles, would be better suited for a department that actually has a lot more vehicles There's not even 24 vehicles in the BMD department. And that's something that needs to be looked at as far as, type of vehicles, maybe electric vehicles, as the chairman of the board was talking about earlier, or even just conventional vehicles. Anything might be good for replacement there. But it doesn't seem to make sense to me that one of the smaller departments is in charge of that list and has to do whatever related management there is from that. So that's another one that I think might be well suited for another department, perhaps the Department of Transportation, perhaps the Sheriff's Department. I'm not really sure, the ones that have the largest fleet. But that's something to consider, and again, might involve having to sit down with a task force and go through that. So those were a couple of extra things that kind of came up that I was a little surprised to see and didn't expect when I started the project. And then finally, I think I would like to say that kind of looking forward beyond the current situation, I think I've recommended in here that there be an immediate pay increase. Again, I know it's not coming out of my pocket, so maybe it's easy for me to say, but a pay increase for those workers is warranted. I put in there 5% for right now. I've even talked to Chris about that a little bit. That doesn't really bring them up to the competitive rate as I saw from the other departments at the other counties and the private sector. And then I think you need to look at further increases down the road. Could be 10%. I know that percentage sounds like a lot, but their base is low on that percentage. It's not like you're adding 10% on top of a six-figure salary. It is a smaller amount. So that's one thing. And then I think the other is, and I did talk to your human resources, one of your human resources staff people about this, that it is, I think, advisable for the county to conduct or hire someone to perform a wage and salary survey overall, not just only BMD. BMD should be part of that. And then look at job descriptions, look at, again, maybe further than I was able to about what's going on out there in the world. And then hopefully that information then could be the basis for some future action that you might want to take concerning your personnel. That way, I think you could bring a little more internal equity in terms of what people are getting paid, and then externally you can be competitive. I'm not suggesting enrich people. That's not, to me, the way to go with a public agency or county government, but at least make it competitive so that you can have, the best staff and personnel that you possibly can, and that you can also hold them accountable with the proper job descriptions and give management that ability to deploy them appropriately. And then the other thing I mentioned in here is there, and this is something that I think the executive director has started working on, and he could elaborate on this either today or some other time, but training and continuing education of the personnel, and that way they can take on greater tasks. And I think I point out in here that you could reduce your reliance on your the millions that you spend on contractual services to go in and fix things. Some of that cost that you could reduce could help pay for the internal employees who could be hopefully reliable and well-trained and trained up beyond what they are now, or bring on new people in the future with a more competitive salary or wage. And that, I think, would be a big plus for you too, because you want quality people. I know you do. That's always been my experience with Kane County. You want quality people working here, serving the public. And this would be another big part of helping both Chris and Rick and whoever else is in that department to get the job done and get it done right and try to do it in the most efficient way. So that would be another thing to consider. So I think, Mr. Chairman, I've covered not exactly
A lot of,
consecutively,
yeah.
but I think I covered those 13, the baker's dozen there. I think I covered it for your
Great.
consideration. Unless Chris, you think I missed something, but I think I covered,
well, let's ask the.
for now
committee
anyway.
Here, any questions or comments on this at this time? A lot to digest.
Yes, yes.
Certainly this will give us some good insight to what we should be doing in the future. I commend you on your work, and certainly it's a very nice looking and easily digestible thing, but it's detailed and there's a lot of information in there.
Well, I thank you for those comments because it's
Yeah.
nice to hear that feedback.
Yeah.
But you're right, it is a lot to take in. But I'm sure that all of you will absorb that, and I'll do whatever I can to, with, at Chris's request and, or your request, Mr. Chairman, to help you deal with it if you need to.
Now you can just say Chris and he covers both of us.
There you go. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
All right.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then.
Davis with a question
Oh,
and
Mr.
comment.
Davis online, yes.
I'm still here.
Well, my comment is, in decades of private sector experience, it's always popular to be able to say to your customers that you've held the line on prices and, stay in the course, but you can't go that way very, very long, before it catches up with you. And we've dug ourselves a little bit of a hole here that we now have to work out of. But my question, in your experience, have you seen, or is there a reason to look at a fleet maintenance department, so to speak? Is that something that, instead of separating it out into each of the various departments to take care of their own, have you ever seen one where that is a department that looks at the fleet for everyone?
Yes. And I think an organization like Kane could be large enough to do that. I'd say most of my experience is that it's usually a division of a department, but I have seen it, like when I was in Springfield and in Schaumburg, we did have specialty maintenance of the fleet and a vehicle fleet replacement plan. I don't think you have to necessarily create another department to do that. I think you just need to make sure that there is some person that you can hold accountable, and that person has enough resources to track and take care of that. But you also have to have, obviously, the people who are going to maintain those departments' vehicles. So would I say, I'd say the ideal would probably be what you're suggesting. I mean, if there's a way to carve that out and make it happen, if you have the ability financially to do that, that makes a lot of sense to me, because then they can focus on that and be held accountable for that. And they then become the internal service department for the other departments in that respect.
It would be my hope.
But I think you could do it either way, just as long as you have those elements.
The goal, of course, wouldn't be to just create, more another department unnecessarily. Right. I'd be looking for efficiencies and cost savings, because if it's under one tent, perhaps you find areas where equipment, vehicles can have been duplicated unnecessarily and could be handled differently. I would want to look at it from saving money, not from spending more to just create another director level position.
Right. Well, I can tell you this: when my last public assignment was as village manager of Schiller Park, and that's exactly what we had there. I was part of implementing that. We actually it was within the Public Works Department, but there was a person who was assigned. We had the chief mechanic and we had another administrative person who were in charge of and tracked the vehicle fleet. They had a program too, an IT program that they used to track and handle that equipment. Now, they didn't have the vehicle fleet size that you have here, that's for sure. But that worked out very well, because whenever I had a question, or any member of any alderman on or village, I should say, village trustee had a question. We knew where to go, and the data that was produced for that actually did help during the capital improvement process to make decisions about what we were going to do with vehicles. Tracking the older ones with more mileage, more years, et cetera. And I made sure we took care of that, and that really helped out a lot. So there are different ways to do it, but I'm glad you brought this up.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Davis.
Question, Copy?
Mr. Copey?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I noticed you had put a lot of emphasis on the turnover of personnel. Now, we have a tremendous amount of employees, and the payroll is enormous. And but we have a non-union and a union staffing divergence. And I was curious, did you notice the turnover difference in the non-union versus the union? And what would the cost difference be if they were all prevailing wage or union, as you suggest?
I didn't see a big difference between the union and non-union. I didn't go into this with the idea of and Chris didn't really ask me to look at union versus non-union deeply, but I did look at it because when I'm pulling together the data about who's working where. But just as an example, the two most recent people that quit were union people. The other ones were non-union. So we were seeing it across the board in terms of the vacancy problem. The one difference I noticed with that contract for the union was that they were able to get some extra pay. I don't know if you want to call that hazard pay. I'm not sure what your exact phrase is. They did get some extra payment, but again, they still left.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Copey?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's pertinent, and it's enough for now. I don't mean to belabor any point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Townsend? Mr. Fonstock?
One of the things I would point out for the vehicle inventory, that's actually defined in an ordinance. And it says that for fixed assets, it goes through finance, and for insurance liability, it goes through HR. So they have to both maintain inventory for those two purposes. We functionally work on it between building management and IT because the list needs to be made. So they are by ordinance, I think, charged with keeping those lists. But
Really?
functionally, operationally, it's done between building management and IT. But it is in the ordinance. I just looked it up.
Okay.
Still thinking. That's interesting. Not sure where to go on that, but thank you for the information.
Just trying to make the record.
Absolutely. No, and I'm sure that's the kind of thing we'll need to consider if there's going to be any changes, substantive changes
Yes.
on that. I'm guessing everybody else is thinking hard on that as well, since it's quiet. You must have answered all the questions. Anybody
There's
else?
a lot to digest. Gums here, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Madam Gums?
I just want to thank you. Again, there is a lot to digest. And of course, I don't have that in front of me, but I wanted to thank you for your candid conversations, because sometimes those don't happen very often. It's a deep, deep hole I think we have to escape from to get where we need to be. So I just want to thank you, and I look forward to digging into it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gums. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then can I have a motion and a second to place the reports on file?
So moved
Oh, I'm
by
sorry.
Davis.
Excuse me, bookkeeping, I was asked through Chris from the sheriff to pull the resolution A. for consideration today?
Yes, it's now going to the ARP, I do believe is what Sheriff Hayne told me. And I've also had conversation with Sheriff Hayne in reference Resolution 21-27 that the sheriff will need to determine who he'll be assigning project or signature authority to for that resolution in reference things like pay applications, change orders, invoices, et cetera.
Okay, so as far as this committee, it was requested it be pulled from here, wherever it goes that after that, and maybe up to them. So as chairman, I'm pulling that as per requested. Any other comments about that? Reports, and then can I have a motion and a second to replace the fort?
Berman moved.
Like I said, Berman moves.
Gums will second.
Gums second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Frost,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Yes.
Motion passes. We have no need for executive session this morning, I believe.
Motion for
So
adjournment.
move to adjourn by Berman.
Gums will
Davis, second.
Davis, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.